The Game Schooler podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. And this week's episode is all about the good Dr. Reiner Knizia and includes an exclusive interview and the current Game Schooler Top 10 Reiner Knizia games. Welcome to the Game Schooler podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
Doug, I'm a little in shock. We actually just got done interviewing Dr. Knizia, and I'm not on a first-name basis. I won't pretend to be. He's Dr. Knizia, and he probably will be with me from now on. It was an incredible interview. His presence, his kindness, his charm, his wit, his intelligence, his authenticity, his sincerity. So that's how I am. How about you?
I agree. It was more than I could have imagined. And without adding more teases and spoilers, let's head over to that interview right now, and then we'll kind of wrap up, and we've got an awesome top 10 for you. So let's move on to that interview with Dr. Knizia right now. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking to world-renowned designer Dr. Reiner Knizia. Since publishing his first game in 1990, he has gone on to publish over 800 games and books worldwide. He has won so many awards, it takes a 15-page PDF to list them all, including both the Spiel des Jahres and Kinderspiel des Jahres awards. We are so grateful to have you here. Welcome to the Game Schooler podcast, Dr. Reiner Knizia.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yep. So let's start at the beginning. How did you get started in gaming and game design?
You see, the wonderful thing in gaming and game design is that all the designers come from very different angles and very different backgrounds, but we are united by the love for the games. And that's, in my eyes, for the product. That's, in my eyes, very unique. I've been working in the IT industry, I've been working in the banking industry, and there the love for a mortgage is not what unites everybody together. So it's really wonderful that this brings us together. And of course, that was the same for me. So I love to play. I grew up in a small town in southern Germany. It was quite some time ago, pre-internet, where you could order things and so on. So the only shop in my town which sold games was the Barber. So I had quite a limited choice, and that means it drove me to, I want to play more, I want to have other themes in there, just for playing and for the enjoyment myself, to do my first designs.
Awesome.
And what's your favorite part of designing games?
That's a difficult question because, I'm not just working on one game at a time. And that means it is essentially the balance and the variety that some of the designs are in the analytical stage, where I do some reading depending on what it is, do some research, watch videos, or then I'm in the process of making the first prototypes, so you need to get some initial graphics and everything together. And then it's the playtesting, and the playtesting is the moment of truth. So that's sometimes the most dreaded moment, when all the nice game mechanics which work perfectly in my mind suddenly see the moment of truth. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. All the experience doesn't help, you have to playtest. And playtesting is then a very social aspect, as you know. So I think it's a mix of having everything in there and being able to do this part of the day and that part of the day is really what makes it. I would not just want to do one single bit of the design process. I think that would drive me crazy. It's just the variety.
Yeah, there is certainly a bunch of variety and a lot of hats to be wearing when designing games. After designing 800 games and publishing books and things like that, what are the biggest lessons you've learned through the years as a game designer?
The motivation why to design games is to bring enjoyment to the people. And that's our motto, and that's on our letterhead, that's on our business card. I reflected that very early in my career, and I think this still holds true. And so it's not about making money, it's not about developing your ego, or whatever you could think about of developing a company. It is really this mission, and if this mission, I believe, is not in your heart, game design becomes a very hard, as every job you have just to do for a living becomes very hard. And because you're competing with particularly in the games industry, with so many enthusiasts, you are on a back foot already. So it is, if you love it, and do it for the right purposes, as one of the learning exercises. Of course, the other one is games are really a mirror of our time. I was lucky enough, blessed enough to design early in my career in the 90s a lot of games which became classics and which are still being republished, and now with the new opportunities through crowdfunding, of course, you can give them deluxe editions and do lots of things, so that's a real boost for these. But you cannot rest on your old laurels. So essentially, time moves on. Different things are relevant for different people, and so in order to catch, in order to engage today's players, it needs to be relevant for today's themes, for today's interest, also for today's style of life, which has changed quite considerably over the decades. Much more short attention span, of course, much more also the digital side in there. So, in a nutshell, do what you love and stay relevant.
That's great. You're obviously so smart. You anticipated our next question by that answer. How has the changing market affected your design process? And two examples, you just touched on crowdfunding, but also the emergence of solo games and things like that. How has that changing market really affected how you design games?
But there are two things. First of all, there's a change inside myself, because initially, I think as a designer, as a game designer, you start by developing those games you love to play. You then soon see that you have to kind of dissolve yourself a little bit from this, detach yourself a bit from this, and see how you can reach the market, how you can reach many people. So with this respect, my development myself was going a little bit away from the more complex games, from the deeper games, and trying. I'm a scientist, so I'm trying to reduce the game principles, the game rules to just essentially basic rules which are almost self-evident within this environment. The theme needs to fit, and then the game should provide a platform where people can engage. So this is a development from my side to try to make the access to the game very easy, but also to use, and now I'm coming to the real part of the question, because what's driven from the outside, but also making use of all the new opportunities, and that is new production opportunities, what can be produced at a reasonable price and can be published. And so the market environment has become very different, because when I remember back to the 90s, the markets were much more local. In America, for example, in the United States, there was much more the hobby market, and there was a clear separation to the kid stuff. And whereas in Germany, the culture was much more gaming is a family tradition, is carried on from generation to generation. Today we have a much more globalized world. I don't just mean by globalized supply chains, and which were kind of put on the test through the pandemic, but it is much more wider networked community through the new communication means, and that means products are much less done for individual markets and cultures. They need to have much more a broader appeal, so that the worldwide distribution actually can support these games. So the globalization is certainly one aspect. The possibilities of what can you produce, what can you manufacture and put into a game is another aspect. Then there is a much bigger competition these days. I mean, publishers always tell me, we have so many games, there's so many novelties, give us something which stands out from the crowd. But the point is, not every game can stand out from everything else. It doesn't work. Everything is then 2 feet higher, but it's all on the same level. So sometimes you have a lucky shot and a lucky appearance, but you never know. So it is essentially, as I said before, it is staying relevant, seeing what are the hot topics, what catches people, and going with this. And this is an ongoing process, which is just to be monitored. I mean, there are people always ask me, maybe I'm taking your next question, what are the trends in the industry? And I have a very, very mundane, and then I stop the long answer, mundane view of this. I think trends are created almost randomly because you have one successful game and then this becomes a highlight and then everybody jumps on the bandwagon and so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then afterwards the marketing people can always explain to you why this was supposed to happen. Explanations in the past are easy. If you ask marketing people for the future, it's a different topic.
Yeah. Well, and certainly, the bar has been raised so far since the 90s, whether you're talking about production value and all those things. You had mentioned that you started playing games and you still play games. You love playing games. What is your favorite game that you didn't design?
Usually I get asked the question, what is my favorite game I did design? And it is, you see, the answer to this is I don't have one because I have 800 children, and what is your favorite child? The question you are asking me is essentially also impossible to answer, because the question roots in kind of the assumption that a game is something absolute. And for me, a game lives, as I said, as a platform, lives with the other players. So for me, it is much more, with this group, what is my favorite game? Or with this group, what would I love to play? So I don't think knowing, I mean, if you have a family who has 4, 5, 8 games they know, they can have a favorite game. We, of course, know thousands of games. So it will change every day, depending on the mood and dependent on what's my interest, because my interest and my favorite games is always the ones I'm currently developing, and therefore I'm keeping my eyes open of, is there anything similar that I don't get too close to it, make sure I don't inadvertently copy myself. These 800 games, that's a challenge. And so it is more this challenge. And then, of course, I should say, I am probably not an expert on all the published games, which are out there by many wonderful designers, because game design is really based on playtesting. And so we playtest almost every day. I'll playtest soon after this interview. And so the playtesting takes a lot of time. And of course, a game needs to be playtested with many different people over quite a long period to get it robust, and not just, oh, with this group it works and with all the others it doesn't. And that means I don't have any time to play other games.
Yeah.
You laugh about it. I play games every day, but it is the design.
Sure.
It's not because I'm so much in love with my own stuff. There are many great games out there, but it is really the time aspect. But it is also another aspect why I'm not an expert. You are much more an expert on having an overview of the games in the world. I'm trying not to know too many solutions done by other designers, because when you design a game, I want to be innovative. It is a funny thing in the mind. If you know a solution, it is only this solution. If you know how to construct a bridge in one way, it's only this way. There are many ways to construct a bridge, but if you know one, you can't think of anything else. If you don't know it, you need to find your own way. And so in a way, it helps me to stay innovative and to build my own solutions and stay true to my way, so that my subconscious doesn't lead me onto the other path. That's probably another explanation why there isn't really a favorite game. I mean, I love to play speed chess with one of my friends. That was our favorite game. But as I say, it's very individual, and so there is no absolute answer, unfortunately, I can give you.
Every game has its unique scenario, which it is awesome, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I want to jump in on that with a follow-up question. So, Dr. Knizia, fortunately, you have led to many memorable memories with my actual children. I've never designed a game, so I don't have 800 children. I just have 3 children walking planet Earth. And, when my 8-year-old was 4, she learned numbers and by playing llama. And we play a lot of llama in our house. Doug and I live in Wisconsin, in the Midwestern United States, where trick-taking games are big and popular. You have euchre and sheep's head. And in our house, we learned trick-taking games with Meow. So I have so many memories and experiences around gaming at the table. And I'm wondering if you could tell us about one of your favorite gaming experiences with your family.
I have to admit that we are not playing many games in the family. When I was a child, I was always desperate to play with my parents, because that made a difference. But my parents were both business people, and they always said, "You have friends, play with the friends." So in a way, I missed out a little bit on that, and it then turned to the friends. Now asking what is a very favorite, or what is a remarkable story about playing games. I think what I did in the past, and that's probably my banking side, that was before the photocopiers, very, very old, young age. I was fascinated by piles of money. And so what I did is I hand drew all these banknotes and had whole piles of them. And then I made lotteries. So I had a lottery system. And I tortured all the guests who came and visited the family and said, "You have to play this lottery," because I didn't want to play the board games. "You have to play this lottery, so fill out this thing." And then I sat there in the corner and I had this lottery drawing, and everybody ignored me. But essentially, this was the event which I celebrated to the torture of my family and all the visitors all the time, but they couldn't escape it. So maybe not the answer you expected, but that's a memory which stays there. If they don't want to play with me, I'll make them play.
Sure. No, I think every modern gamer can relate to that. Just trying to find people and friends and family to sit down and play with them. At the Game Schooler podcast, we talk a lot about the educational value of games and the idea that games can provide skills to younger players in ways that are very difficult to teach out of a book, giving you that live experience. Do you think people can develop skills through playing games? And if so, what skills do you think are the most prevalent?
Of course. I mean, we learn skills almost through everything we do. But I nevertheless think that playing games has a very specific role there, because in a way, it's just a game. So we can try things out. We can take different roles, we can try social behaviors, and we get told off, but yes, it was only a game. But nevertheless, in a game, in a role play, and it doesn't have to be a role play game, it can be a board game where you take a role. You learn social behavior, you learn how to lose, and you learn how to win in a decent way. But you also learn strategies, how to analyze situations. So there is a lot of aspects in the physical gaming, which has a social nature, but which also has to always adapt to new situations. Because every game gives you a new role, a new situation, new challenges. And so this is certainly something that educates you in these aspects in a general way. Of course, if you're now talking about specific values in education, then, the school system is there for the kids and not for administration or bureaucracy. And in a way, the tests are a necessary evil, but they don't really help the motivation and the learning, in my experience. And it's not recognized, it's not developed by me, it's a lot of psychologists and a lot of people say that, is learning is an emotional experience. If I tell a child or anybody, sit down now, concentrate, and now you learn, it's not going to work, it's not going to be fun. Learning needs to be fun. And when I do educational games, when I do games for kids to learn something more specific like mathematics or like languages, storytelling, it is always that on the box the parents recognize it's an educational game. The kids shouldn't recognize it. I mean, the kids should just play it and have fun, and they don't even notice that it's a learning exercise. As soon as you notice you have to learn, the fun is gone. So it's really this, as you say, Michael, the kids play it and suddenly they need to add up numbers or see what happens, have a little bit of a risk, which is difficult for small kids. A risk evaluation, okay, do I continue, do I stop, what do I do, which card do I play the same, oh, I have two more there. So it's all these little things that come in there and then that help you. So it's the emotion, and therefore the emotion is very well suited and based in the games, because that's an emotional experience.
That's an incredible answer. That was just awesome. So it's what makes tabletop games great teaching tools?
Well, it is the relatively easy access. It is the hidden aspect of it. It's not dishonest, but it's the hidden aspect of we play, and we have the Montezuma schools, which essentially take away of the tests, and they. I know kids who go to these schools, and the parents ask them, "What have you learned today?" They say, "Nothing. We haven't learned anything. We have just played." This is exactly the point. So the tool is. I repeat myself. It's the emotional experience that the kids have fun with it. They see that they make progress, because once they learn the game, they can understand the next game better. They see that they can play it better the second or third time. So how can I play better? So it's a lot of these things where you firstly don't notice that you learn, but then you recognize your progress, and you can just be thrown into so many even unknown or almost scary situations where I don't know how to do that. Well, it's a game, let's just do it, yes. And so it takes away the fright of learning and failing.
Awesome. Yeah. So as one of the most prolific board game designers of all time, what would you like your legacy in tabletop gaming to be?
I think that's not for me to say. I have not got the ambition to build a museum or a mausoleum for myself. It's the biggest reward for me and for game designers and artists is essentially when you bring enjoyment to the people. That's where I started, and I'm blessed and I'm very grateful for being able to reach so many people, and have managed and have been lucky enough to find the publishers and build a career on that. And of course, once you are more established, the doors open better and things become easier in a way. There are other pitfalls which make it harder again, but it is really the same old motto, the reward and the biggest reward for bringing enjoyment to the people. And this motivates a lot, and this is the only motivation, otherwise I would probably retire.
In every interview, please don't do that. First of all, I was trying to listen all the way to the end. Please don't retire. You're my favorite designer. You bring us so much joy. Keep it going. We another quarter century of games. We can get you up plus 1,000 plus published games, right, Dr. Knizia?
I have no intention to retiring, because
yeah, you heard it. You heard it here first, folks.
If you work, it's a hard life. If you do the thing, if you start, I think this is the biggest message for me, for everyone. If you start in life, if you find your mission, if you find your calling, follow it. Everything else will fall into place, because when you love it, you will not notice how hard you work, in inverted commas, because you don't work. And once you found your calling, and sometimes it takes a long time to find your calling, but once you have don't get desperate. Once you have your calling, follow it and be brave, because it will become very easy if your heart is in there. So, and then once you have found it, you don't want to stop it, because what else would I do? I mean, if I retire, I would just go and play games and design games. So the same thing. That's what I want to do. Yes? So it's not my job, it's my life.
Wonderful. And we know your greatest resource is time. So we just have 2 more questions for you here, Dr. Knizia. And this question is one that we ask everybody that comes on the show. And it's become one of our trademark questions. And that's, what's awesome with board gaming?
Awesome with board gaming is that it opens the door to other players, to other people, not players, to other people. So a board game, we are all the same around the table. So all the political correctness discussions just fall away because we have all got the same role, we are all the same, and it doesn't not only open the door to the people, it also opens the door to their hearts. Because you get to know somebody very quickly, all the formalities fall away, you sit there, you know each other, you have fun together. So it is an enormously fantastic way to meet people. And of course, because I do that on a more professional basis, I do it very internationally, and so I get to know a lot of international people with different cultures. And when I go to a fair, when I go somewhere, I mean, there are always people to meet, so I'm never a lonely tourist. It's always you're integrated in the culture. So for me, it's even a bigger point here, but it is really meeting other people. And if it's just friends and family, bringing them together, or bringing new people together when you go to festivals, to convention, that's what gaming is all about. It's about having a stimulating time with other people.
That is awesome. I agree. And you, again, mind reading our next question. We're 2 Americans that one day aspire to go to the Essen Game Fair. Tell us about it and what makes Essen so special.
So first of all, I'm deeply disappointed that you have never been to Essen, because it's almost a crime. And you know that Essen is just up now. So Essen is a wonderful experience. The best comparison in the United States is Gen Con. Gen Con is a bit more on the gamer side and the hobby gamer side. Essen is bigger, and Essen is in a very big exhibition hall next to a park, and you have exhibitors from all over the world. But the point here is it is very informal. You don't have to essentially register for a game or whatsoever. They're just big playing areas, and the publishers support the games and support people who introduce you to the games. So you can go there, you can just be amazed how many games there are. You've never seen so many games. So when you go to Essen, bring empty suitcases. You will regret it otherwise. And then you can just look around what there is on offer. I know when I was in Essen for the first time, but very, very early stages, it's amazing how much is on offer. It's amazing to see all the international people as visitors. It's an open public event, and we have, not we, but the fair has about 200,000 visitors over the time, which is 200,000 visitors.
That's incredible.
And so you see you see games in full swing. Sometimes Essen is a bit overrun, so don't expect a quiet place. It's crowded. Buy games, play games, meet people, and just find out how awesome this industry is and how many enthusiastic people there are.
Oh, that's great. We hope our listeners have enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. And we're so grateful and appreciative for you taking time out of your schedule and spending time with us. And if you happen to be attending the Essen Game Fair this year, we understand that you will be at the Mighty Boards booth 3L311 on Saturday at 4 p.m. And you'll be signing copies of Rebirth from Mighty Boards, which I am a backer of. Went to my wallet and got that one. Can't wait to see what you did with that game, Dr. Knizia. Doug, anything to mention?
No, I appreciate the time and taking time out of your busy schedule and play testing and sharing your insights with us. They seem very well aligned with what we think about the hobby and bringing people together and having fun and how important that is. So thank you so much.
Well, once again, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for giving this platform, because you are providing another platform. Yes, it's not the actual game, but it's the platform for people to learn about the games and learn about the community. And I guess you said you never designed the game, because Maybe that's not your heart. Your heart is doing the broadcasting and reaching people in this way. So you're also bringing enjoyment to the people. You found your calling, I hope, I think. And so it's if everybody had the same calling, it would be terrible. Then everybody in the world would design games. And if everybody would be broadcasting, maybe also not so good. So we find our roles. And so congratulations for finding your place, and congratulations for doing almost 200 podcasts so far. And yes, you said you want to see 1,000 here. I want to see 1,000 from you as well. Yes. And all right, good luck with this. And thank you once again. And hello and enjoyment to all the fans and all the players.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, Michael. That was quite an interview, huh?
Yeah. We knew we had 30 minutes, so we tried to... I love research, and you love... you're really good at revision. And I feel like we tried to be prepared, as we do for any interview.
Yeah.
But that exceeded any of my expectations. Just he's a pleasant man. He really is. I could have talked to and just listened to him for another 3-4 hours.
Yeah. Well, and it's like we love his games, and we've talked about them on the show in the past, and obviously there's a lot of them. But I guess I was not aware how well or how closely our mission statement and his mission statements and kind of the way that he views the board game industry aligns with the way that you and I talk about the industry.
Yeah, if you go to knizia.de, right on his site for Reiner Knizia, the second paragraph, though games have been a big part of his life since he was a child, Reiner initially studied at universities in Germany and the USA to become a doctor of mathematics, and then worked as an IT manager and bank director in Germany and England. When he reached 40, he decided it was time for a major change. Life should be fun. Games are fun, and people should have fun with games. So, from then on, he fully dedicated his life to game design, and his motto became bringing enjoyment to the people. And I think that came out in the interview. I mean, the 30 minutes that we just had with him were incredibly joy-filled.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a guy that loves what he does. And because of that, he works very, he mentioned it in there. He's like, you work very hard, but when you love it, it doesn't seem like work. And it's only to outside people that can observe and say, wow, he's really doing a lot. And even setting up the interview with his assistants and the amount of trying to schedule in a time, and there's play testing here, he's doing this here and stuff. So you get a sense of how busy he is, but you can't wipe the smile off that guy's face.
Right. And
so admirable.
He came from a playtesting session. We had 30 minutes. He was getting ready to go to a playtesting session. Folks, it's 6:30 p.m. in Germany right now, real time on a Friday. And what is he doing? He's doing what he loves doing. Yeah. He's playtesting and designing games. Yeah.
I mean, one of the big things for me that stood out that kind of hit a nerve with me, and we've talked about it before on the podcast, is the idea of everybody sitting down at the table and things melt away and disappear. And the way that he phrased it just really struck a chord with me. But that whole idea of once you engage in that game, you're all equal. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter how much money you have. We're all sharing in this experience on an equal level. Because somebody else has more money doesn't mean that they get a better player piece or they sit at a different table. You all come and experience that together as equals. And I really believe that, and I appreciate that, and that's something that he acknowledges and is aware of is really cool.
Yeah, there were so many cool moments. I think the quote, and again, I can't wait to go back and listen to this, but the quote, "The school system is there for the kids." I mean, that needs to go on a T-shirt with our logo on the front with his name underneath it, right? The school system is there for the kids. So just some of those little perspectives when we were getting into learning and about games. The other one that I just absolutely loved, I've heard him on other interviews, and in preparing for this, going back, he talks a lot about variety. And that's something that clearly keeps him engaged in his design work. but he referred to playtesting as the moment of truth. And I think in all of our walks of life, and if anybody, in the basketball world, Phil Jackson was one of the all-time great coaches. His triangle offense, the moment of truth is that initial entry pass, right? And so in different walks of life, you have that, well, this is where things really start. And so to hear that from a game design lens, I've heard when we've had other designers on who talk about, well, playtesting, right? Just a few weeks ago, we had Danielle Reynolds on talking about how they were playtesting daily for the game Her Story. But to hear him talk about, well, this is where it might work or may not work, that's our moment of truth. It really brought a different viewpoint to the playtesting process for me.
Yeah, the biggest impact, I think, or answer from him that I took away was the idea, and anybody that's listened to the podcast for a long time knows that we are very passionate about experiences,
engagement,
and not necessarily buying into the hype and only having games that you can actually get to the table and things of that nature. And when we asked him what his favorite game was from another designer or any other designer, and he punted the question, but he punted the question in the best possible way. Of course, everybody asks him, what's your favorite game that you've designed? And he says it's like picking children, right? Which I get. But he said something about what's your favorite game from other designers, and he said, I can't pick one because it basically changes with every group or every experience, and that those games live in the experience that I've had with that game, which is so fascinating to me, the idea of I have games on my shelf that the experience of playing that game the first time with the group of that people that I played it with was so magical and so special that you could then say, well, that's my favorite game. But it lives in that environment and the time in which that experience was had. That's my favorite game with those people on that day in that moment.
Yeah.
And it really made me think about, I have a lot of games like that if I'm playing this with these people, this is my favorite game. But if I'm playing with these other people, this might be my favorite game. And that's really cool,
It is really cool. And I'm sorry to talk into you there, but I think what it did for me, Doug, that answer hit me in a different way. It got me thinking critically and interrogating the decision of ranking games. Being like, oh man, maybe I'm doing this all wrong. And hey, we're only 189 episodes in. We can always, but
we won't be leaving the high five anytime soon.
No,
but.
I know. But it did get me critically thinking about my own personal favorites, this list, that list. It was such a concise and direct answer that ties into everything that we've talked about just with experiences and engagement and the right game for the right person on the right day.
Yeah. That it's impossible to speak for anyone else, essentially. Yeah. It's that constant reminder of our opinions are our opinions at the time that we're giving the opinions, and they can change. And just because we like something doesn't mean anybody else will like something. Yeah. Even if you tend to agree with us a majority of the time, you might pick up something that we gush about and say, it's really not that good. And that's normal.
Yeah.
And I
that's
think
part of the hobby.
And I think it puts another layer on it, which, would be, I guess, an interesting school of gaming segment. And maybe there's not much more to it, but just the idea of like, if I had a strong connection or an amazing experience with a game one time, and it almost goes into a memory or an heirloom experience for you, that's okay to keep that on your shelf. Yeah. Even if you never play it again, as just a memory
of those.
Where it's like, gosh, the experience that we had as a family or with a friend or my spouse, there are games that I don't play very much, but I can look at them and say, we played that so much and it was a blast, and I can't imagine getting rid of it. that they are little time capsules.
No, I think that's a good point, Doug. That I will need to do that as a school of gaming, because I have enough examples, and some of them might not be as much on brand, but they'll make for a good story.
Yeah.
So we'll have to come back to that. I think there's one other question, and folks, typically when we do an interview, it's end of the workday and we're running into other stuff. We got to prep dinner and see our families. When Dr. Reiner Knizia comes on the Game Schooler podcast, I took vacation. We cleared our day. So we're going to reflect and rant a little bit here. But the question about, do you believe, and you asked him, and I loved how you set it up and add a little bit of Koteki flavor to it. But you asked him if people can develop skills through playing board games, and just you could see the response. He jumped at it, and it was, of course. But then he also couched it with, but it is just a game. And so it was interesting to hear him walk back and forth.
Well, I thought he was referencing that in the idea of being able to, we talk about risk management. I think referring to that in the idea of, like, you can put on a different persona, you can try a different strategy, and it's just a game. So nothing bad happens out of it, which is great.
Yeah. No, that was excellent.
So
anything else really stand out?
Not without listening. I mean, going back and listening, I'm certainly on a little bit of a high of talking to him and just exceeding my wildest expectations on what I thought that could be, and just his warmth and generosity and how kind and friendly he was awesome.
Yeah, now I'm going to go ahead and just talk about how that interview came about. So take a moment of where we are in time in case you need to cut it. But folks, I got to just give a little bit of a praise and a shout out for how this all got lined up. It couldn't have been more than 3 weeks ago where my kids were like, because we've been doing some interviews and just had some fantastic guests on here, and we're having a blast. And so I get done with an interview, I go upstairs, and I'm just talking like Doug and I are talking right now, but I'm talking at my family, and I'm going through the whole interview and how much fun it is to talk to people from around the world. And my middle child said, "You should get Reiner Knizia on the show." And I kind of scoffed at it, like, we're thinking we're not big enough. I know who we are. We're a boutique podcast. We're a niche within a niche, and then one of our listeners who has just been so supportive to Doug and I, and awesome, and on our Discord goes by Pax Ammo 84. I won't say any more than that. Reached out to Dr. Knizia's team and said, "Hey, Reiner should be on this show." And Dr. Knizia's assistant said, "Sure." And I was just completely blown away and shocked by it. So thank you.
Well, and Michael got the info. Michael saw it before I did, and he texted me. And I'm like, "You are so full of it. You are such a liar." And maybe not those nice of terms, but I couldn't believe it when he said it. And then he's like, "No, seriously." It's like one of those things where it's like, "Let me sit you down. Seriously, Doug, you need to go check your email."
Yeah. So Pax Ammo 84, really appreciate everything that you do on our Discord. You're so positive. I mean, the pictures with you and your husband, your kiddos, like the work that you're doing, it's awesome. But going that extra step so that we could have that moment, that interview with him, it's pretty incredible. So we when we say all the time, it's not just to get more people in the Discord. It's not just to get more subscribers or followers. When we talk about how happy we are with the community that's been created on that Discord, and I Doug and I feel lucky to be a part of that. So we want to just send a heartfelt thank you over the air out to you for lining that.
Yeah, it's not about us. It's about a great community and the folks that are in there. And she's a shining example of that, of just awesome people that I know friendships have been formed in there. And, we encourage you to certainly check that out, gameschooler.com/Discord. How about we move on to a top 10 list, Michael? How's that sound? So we're going to do a Game Schooler Reiner Knizia top 10. Now, Michael and I have both scientifically submitted our lists, compared them, and used a complicated rubric to come up with this list of our joint top 10. I'm used to saying high five. The guy's got 800 games.
Yeah.
And there are some heavy hitters that we haven't played yet. Some of them are on Michael's shelf. Some of them are not. Some of them are on my shelf.
Some of them are not.
Yes. So that is the giant caveat that we'll say beforehand, is that by no means is this an exhaustive list. This is the list of things that we've played and have a consensus on. Is that
ones that
accurate?
That's so accurate, and ones that I think we could come back to in 100 episodes. You know, the good doctor just said he would come back on our show for episode 400. So maybe leading into episode 400, or the first time we do go to Essen, and you have to hold me back from giving him a hug.
Yeah.
You know, we revisit
when he has
it.
1,600 games, we'll revisit.
I keep a next up list of Dr. Knizia games on my desk. So
yeah,
and that's not just because of his episode. That's
no emergency card in his wallet. He's got a next up list for if he ever gets in an automobile accident, they're going to be looking. What's this guy's name? Well, he's got an up next list of Reiner Knizia games. I see.
All right, I'll do evens. That way, Doug can close out the list with our number one. Number 10 for us is just a phenomenal game. It was our game of the week back in episode 109. It's designed by Dr. Reiner Knizia, and that's Blue Lagoon. Blue Lagoon first came out in 2018, and it's published by Blue Orange Games. And folks, don't just take our word for it. The esteemed award-winning podcasters over at Board Game Barrage also love Blue Lagoon. The even possibly more esteemed Mike DeLisio, who's a huge Reiner Knizia fan, is also a fan of it. So why do award-winning podcasters and the Game Schooler podcast love Blue Lagoon? Well, Doug, let's tell them about it.
Yeah, it's a game that plays over two very distinct phases of kind of putting your folks out on the board, and then in the first round, and then based on the second round, what you've done in the first round, you're going to then branch off from there. So it's a little bit more restricted in the second round, but based on what you've done in the first round. And, in the first phase, you can place a token anywhere as long as it's touching either the lagoon or one of your previously played tokens. But in the second phase, the board is cleared except for the villages that you put out. And now you can only expand from villages you played in the first phase. And at the end of both phases, you're going to score points. So you're, playing for early game and long game at the same time, which is a good common thread for a lot of his games.
Yeah, and so that this list doesn't go a full hour and a half, I won't do a full deep dive. It won't be a game of the week for all 10, but just a couple things. My initial expectation, I'm going to use two gamer jargon terms that are hot right now that I don't tend to use, but I think it paints a good example. My initial bias in going in and watching a rules teach, knowing that Doug was going to get the full rules teach from Doug, was, okay, this is going to be a cozy game. But I'll tell you what, as soon as that phase 2 hit, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a real deal tile placement. This is me. Oh my, this is a gamer's game. And so the fact that Blue Orange had published it, and we'd done some games of the week from Blue Orange in the past where I thought it'll be, more, real family. This game can trend towards that light hobby, not in complexity, but in gameplay. If you're playing with your game group, it takes a whole different light than if you're playing with your 8 and 10-year-old.
Yeah, no, great recap there. So that's our number 10, Blue Lagoon. Our number 9, some people may be shocked that it's 9 for us, but that is the game Ra, which originally came out in 1999 and is currently published by 25th Century Games. And Ra is an auction-style game where you start out with 4 auction numbers, and tiles are going to be coming out. You're going to be potentially either adding new tiles to the marketplace or bidding on the tiles that are out there by invoking Ra, or sometimes a Ra tile will come out of the bag, which will instigate an auction. And you're going to be collecting some tiles that disappear at the end of every epoch. There are 3 in the game, or you are going to be getting some that stay around for the whole game, and they will contribute to some end game scoring.
You might. I won't.
No, you're just gonna do. You're just gonna do
I never get those.
The one-offs.
Because I'm terrible at bidding in auction games.
I am as well, and it is one that I just don't do well with the public available. When people know how many coins I have to bid, I fold like a chair. I am a disaster in that. But this is a game that, although I had not played it until recently, I have played quite a bit on the iOS and on my iPad. That it's just like, well, I'll throw in a quick little game of that, and I very much enjoy it in that realm and at the table. You like this way more than I do, Michael.
Yeah, I love Ra. I want to play it more. I want to play it with different groups. I think
because the group with me is terrible.
No. When I'm playing with you and with a Wunderkind who sits on your right and my left, I know I'm going to be sitting in third out of third. I think that part of the things that I like about it, though, I get a full game experience in 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
When it's done, I want to play more. And so it will come up on future lists for me, I anticipate. It's one that I'm keeping. I have about 10 hours to decide if I'm going to back the expansion. I don't know if there's going to be a late pledge. I did reach out to Chad at 25th Century to find out about that. So I can't stand when podcasters talk about things that are open and closed.
Too bad. It's too late.
Too late. And if you go to 25thCenturyGames.com, the website, Ra's up there right now. So you can find a great version. And I'm sure once the Kickstarter fulfills, he'll have this game for a while is what I'm trying to. Number 8 hasn't been a game of the week yet, but I have a feeling that it may someday, and that's Tutankhamun.
Yes.
The most recent version was published in 2021 on 25th Century Games, but in doing research, I think this game goes back to the early 90s. I'll pull that up in a moment, but I'm actually gonna send the description over to you because you're better at that, and I'm gonna look up the initial origin story of this one.
Yeah, so in Tutankhamun, everybody starts out with a set number of points. It might be 25 or 30, I can't quite remember, and there is a giant river or row of tiles that wrap around, and you start at the end of that Nile River, and you can move forward as far as you want, and then you're going to be taking a tile. You can't go backwards, and as you take tiles, there are a whole bunch of different tiles. Most of them have numbers on them, so it might be 2 or a 5. That's going to determine how many tiles there are of that type in the game. So if I land on the 5, that means there's 5 tiles of that type in the game. Once all of those 5 tiles have been claimed from the Nile, we're going to then score it out, and it's a majority. Whoever's got the most of them is going to get the most points, get the 5 points, and then they can move their marker back. And essentially, you're trying to get rid of all of your points, be the first one to get down to 0. And there are also some god tiles in there as well that allow you to manipulate the rules and change some things as well. So that's loosely how you play Tutankhamun.
Really good game, though. What do you enjoy about that one briefly, since we haven't touched on it as a high five?
It's the artwork is really well done, I think, in that game, where a lot
in
of
the 2021 version,
yes.
not the 1993
Yes.
version. Clarifier.
I think there are certainly a lot of Egyptian themed games, and they tend to look samey over and over again. And this one, I think, has got a really cool look, and the production is really well done as far as this one is concerned.
I love that decision of when to race ahead and when to hold, and can I get more stuff along the way?
Yeah.
So that one decision point that comes out in that game, I really enjoy.
Well, especially when you get to a point where it's clear that I have the majority, so I don't need to race forward to get that. It has a little bit of a game that we'll be talking about later in the list that has that. Well, based on what I can see around the table, I know I've already got a good chance at that, so I don't need to pursue it anymore. So that is our number 8, Tutankhamun. Our number 7 is a legacy game called My City, which was originally published in 2020 by Cosmos, and this is a roll and write legacy game. in which you are city building with polyomino shape. Is it roll and write, or am I no? Just tile placement.
Yep.
Just tile placement.
Yep.
I think of it as a roll and write because it.
Well, there is a roll and write in my city, so that's why. And I've been talking to you offline about it recently. I picked it up in a trade, and
So it is
you're forgiven.
Yep, it's a tile placement game, and that you are flipping over cards there, telling you which tiles you need to place on your board, and then trying to kind of puzzle that out. There are certain things you want to cover up, certain things you want to keep exposed, and inevitably you run out of space for it. And as you go along, game after game, new building types are being unlocked, new shapes and things of that nature. And it's just a really solid experience, certainly for a legacy game that's not, in my opinion, overwhelming. It's one that you can get through as a family.
Yeah, and it does a great job of scaffolding the mechanics from game to game. Doug, can you recall when we played it? I think this is going to just completely blow your mind.
So it came out in 2021 or 2020, so I'm going to assume we played it March of 2021.
December 11th of 2020 was our last time that we played
3 months
it.
Off. Not too bad.
Yeah, but I mean, to think that was already 4 years ago. So yeah, that's a fun one that I love, one that has stayed in my collection. And off to number 6, another game that's in my collection that I really enjoy. I think I might enjoy more than some others, but that's Whale Riders. 2021, published by Grail Games, the beautiful Vincent Dutrait art. But in Whale Runners, in Whale Riders, you are thematically, folks, it's a little bit of a difficult one to explain on a podcast. So you might want to pause if you're not driving and pull up Board Game Geek or something and just look at it. But you are riding a whale and basically deciding at what point you're going to go and get some items along these vertical tracks that are laid out on the board. And it's a set collection game, essentially. So it has some of those elements that we talked about in Tutankhamun, but it's laid out differently on the board. What I enjoy about Whale Riders, really easy to get up and running and teach. Once the game is set up on the table, you can get 8, 10, 12-year-olds over to the table and just say, hey, let's play a game here quick. And you can explain it while you're playing it. And then when to tactically veer off and to decide to collect other sets. Right now, it's not super widely available, so I would not recommend you run out and spend $100 to get it. But it's one that I've enjoyed playing a lot and playing with different groups.
Yeah, it's a good one. It has a little bit of that Tutankhamun vibe to it of how far you want to go and kind of pushing your luck on there as well. So
was that the game you were alluding to?
It is not, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, it is available on Board Game Bliss in Canada if you're looking for it for $30. Noble Knight, unfortunately, or actually it's not. I misspoke again. Good gravy. Should have done better research. Was so overwhelmed with Dr. Knizia. It might be a little bit harder to find, but if you get the chance.
Yep, there you go. So that's our number 6, Whale Riders. Number 5, we talked about just in episode 183, and that is Sunrise Lane, published in 2023 by Horrible Guild. And this is a great little game about collecting cards and then turning those cards to put your buildings out on the main board and score points based on the number of cards and the pips on that space that you are placing them on. Great art, great production. It is one of those games where you open it up and you're like, there's a lot of game in this box. So the production is really well done and just does a good job of, I feel like it's almost like a super fast family version of Cape May. Is kind of the vibe that it gives me.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's kind of where I block it in my head.
Yeah. And I like the area control in it too. I love the idea of I'm going to completely give up on that majority because I'm going to try to get first or second in the other 3 areas. I can see why you'd get the Cape May vibes though. You know, it kind of has that same feel.
Art and theme and just general general kind of vibe, putting your buildings out on the map. So anything else on that one? If you want more, we obviously did a
go
deep
check
dive.
it out in episode 183 because we gushed on that for a half hour. I love the card play in it. I love putting the card on the table and building the house. There's just something very tactile about that game with the simplicity that I get in a lot of hobby games, but I'm getting it in a family level game there at Sunrise Lane. Awesome. Yeah, folks, the top four, I mean, we're really... they've all been games of the week at some point or featured heavily prominently on our show. And number 4 is A Quest for El Dorado. Episode 80 is where we covered it as a game of the week, released in 2017 by Ravensburger. Pretty certain it was a Spiel des Jahres, right, Doug? This one won the Spiel.
It did not.
It did not. It should have.
But
they were wrong.
I did. I did a search on that PDF document, and I think like 28 nominations came up for the Good Doctor for different games that he's been nominated over the years. And I believe he only has one Spiel des Jahres win, and that is for a game called Keltis.
Keltis, yeah.
Which is mind-boggling.
So this was nominated.
When you look at the number of nominated ones, you're like, how did that not win? How is that possible? But so anyway, back to the Quest for El Dorado.
The Quest for El Dorado is a deck builder where you feel like you're Indiana Jones because you're making your way across the island. It has just a wonderful marketplace mechanic as you are getting cards into your deck. Those cards do not replenish. Am I recalling that correct?
Well,
Go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, the cool part is that as you deplete a market of cards, whoever depleted them gets to pick the new card that comes into the market. So normally when you're playing deck building games, it's like, here's the 10 cards that are in the game. In this game, maybe there's 15 or 20 different types of cards, but it isn't until somebody clears out one, they get to pick out of the remaining 10 or 15 types of cards, which one is actually going to come into the game. So it's adding a variety into every game and kind of makes you want to deplete one, even if you don't want that card, because you may want a different card in the game and in that marketplace, which is really cool. And you're using variable setup boards, and you're traveling through jungle and water and desert spaces to essentially try and be the first one to get to the fabled city of El Dorado.
Yeah, and folks, I know for the Reiner Knizia enthusiasts out there, if you're listening, that's an actual Discord channel. That's not me making it up or a second podcast that I'm looking to start. There's a Knizia interview question thread where this one didn't make the cut. We only had 30 minutes, but the question was, to date, 81 different cards have been officially published for the El Dorado game system. How many more cards have been playtested but didn't make the cut? What is a card you find interesting that has not yet been published? I mean, this is the level of fandom that people have for this man and his
That's
games.
Like those Star Wars questions.
I know, and as
when
we're
a tauntaun decomposes, at which rate does it?
We're going through a list here of 10, and I almost have a little bit of imposter syndrome here because we do play so many games, but that's just, one game from the Good Doctor that people have fallen in love with. It's already basically gotten a second printing and fresh coat of paint from Vincent Dutrait. I don't have that one. I have the OG from 2017. Good.
Yep.
Over to you, Doug.
All right, great game. The Quest for El Dorado is our number 4. Our number 3, and as Michael said, we are talking a lot about these games, so we're not going to go into huge detail on them, but that's Llama. We talked about it in episode 97. That one came out in 2009 by Amigo. Is that possible? Did I write that down right?
No, you wrote that down completely wrong. 2019.
2019.
You forgot a one.
Yeah, geez. Bad moments in podcasting. So, Llama, you get a hand of cards, and you get to match. The cards are numbered 1 through 6, with the Llama being the crossover card that stretches a 6 back to a 1. On your turn, you can play the same card that's in the discard pile. So if a 1 is there, I can play a 1 down, or I could jump it up to a 2. You can move 1 space forward, and the Llama resets. So if there is a 6, I can play a Llama, and then a 1 is played on top of the Llama. You are trying to get rid of all of your cards. However, you can drop out early in the round, and you will only score the face value on the cards. But for example, if I have 3 twos left, I'm only going to score 2 points for those. So it may be more advantageous to drop out rather than draw new cards to hopefully end the round. You are basically trying to avoid points in this game, and the first person to get 40 points,
40.
I believe,
Race to 40. Yep.
triggers
Biggest
the end
loser.
game, and then whoever has the lowest points at that point is going to be the winner. Just a fantastic, simple. This is one of the, we talk in the past about travel games and bringing games in a board game.
Lives in my
card game quiver. This one is one that I brought to basketball tournaments, and kids are waiting around, and you just pull this out and everybody can play. So great one, Llama. I actually played it in the Hurricane in Disney World. So
hey, awesome. I played it with my mother-in-law just not that long ago. It plays Hurricane and with Abuelita. So what else can you get from that, huh?
Yep. So
awesome.
That is our number 3, Llama.
Episode 97, go listen more about it. And also right around that time when we had, because Doug's notes on the run sheet for this next game says a bunch of high five lists. We've talked about this one so much, and that's Schottentotten. Doug would also say Battle Line. I would just say Schottentotten. Schottentotten Battle Line are very similar, possibly even the same game. I don't agree. Schottentotten was published in 1999 by Yellow, and Battle Line came out in 2000 by GMT Games. And it is a 2-player only game where you are competing. I almost went like Schottentotten and Battle Line. I'm just going to talk Schottentotten. I'll let you talk.
They're the same.
Battle Line.
They're literally the same.
But in Schottentotten, you're in like this mythical Scottish world universe with just really cool, goofy art. And you're competing over one of 9 different tiles. And if you win the middle 3, game over. The way you get a tile is by putting cards out from your hand and having the best set or run, almost like a little poker/rummy mechanic down. And Doug will tell you all his favorite thing about the game because we've heard it on 8 or 10 other episodes as we've talked about Schottentotten. But Doug, what's one of your favorite parts of the game?
Yeah, so I think just to kind of backtrack a little bit, this is, I think it becomes a point of where you got into the game. Whether you're Schottentotten or Battle Line, they are so very similar. Michael said you're competing over these markers that you need to move to your side by having a better hand and an area control. If you get 4 on your side, you win, or if you happen to get 3 in a row, you win. What I love about this, which I was referring to in which game was I referring to that? Tutankhamun. It is possible to deduce that you, based on the cards that I've already played, you can't create a better hand than me. So I'm going to win this. You can kind of use deduction to prove it's impossible for you to get a better hand. So I win this, even though we have not both played 3 cards on each side of the marker. And I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'll go ahead and take that now.
Yeah.
And if you're playing this game with somebody for the first time, you don't need to tell them that. You can just do it. And then you'll see the shock. We have a friend that played games with, and I did that to him, and I can recall right where I was sitting where I just pulled that tile. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Well, how would you possibly win that one? So, yeah.
So this is one that, and our 1 and 2 are essentially 1A and 1B, because Michael and I both put these at 1 and 2 on our list, but in opposite order. So we gave Michael the bone here on this one and let his go to number 1. This was my number 1, Michael's number 2, but just an awesome game. Schottentotten or Battle Line, either one of those.
And when you see how much of a 2-player game is in that little box, just a great one.
So our number 1 is going to be Lost Cities, which originally came out in 1998, and the publisher is Cosmos. Michael's got a very different version than I do. I've got the very old school version. And in this one, you've got a hand of cards, and on your turn, you have to play a card and then pick up a card. And you can do that from the draw pile, or you can do it from the center board. There are 5 different colors, I believe, journeys, expeditions that you can go on. And you need to play cards in ascending order. However, you need to pay a cost of 10 or 20 points, I don't quite remember, to go on that expedition. So the cards that you lay down need to be more than that.
Your expedition costs you 20.
To start scoring points, and you're going to score the face value of the card. So there comes this moment of, I have the 4 and I have the 7. Can I try and get this 5 or 6 out of there before I move on to play the 7? And kind of hoping that it comes out, hoping I draw it. Hopefully Michael discards it. And eventually maybe you find it, or you're like, I got to put the 7 down because I got to start closing this expedition out and laying it out there. And this is a game that I played with my mother-in-law a ton, and it just drove her nuts that she could not beat me. Went out, got the game, tried to do it. I still haven't played with her again. I don't know if she's ever beaten me, but so that's my memory of this game. But my wife and I used to play this a ton, and it's just a great back and forth. If you talk about tug of war and tension in a 2-player game, this game epitomizes that, because you are desperately trying to get certain cards on your side and to play out, and holding some back in your hand that's like, I know Michael's looking for this 7 and I got it. He's never going to find it, and trying to balance that. If I want to keep that out of his hands, but I'm also looking for my own cards. So when to be able to dump that one off is huge.
Yeah, one thing to say about Lost Cities, and then just a quick recap on the list. I think what I love about Lost Cities is it allows me to play recklessly or very, very, very conservative, dare I say prudently, within from one game to the next.
You're either going to play Michael McCabe style or Doug Kotecki style.
Well, I can do both in this game. I can do both in this game, and so that's what I love about Lost Cities. That's why I had it one in my list. And what you just mentioned, I've played this game with you and had a ton of fun. I've played this with my daughter and had a ton of fun. I still play this game with my wife. This is kind of our go-to date game. If we're going out to a coffee shop or something, Lost Cities comes with us. And then I, as I'm looking at the list here, I think one of the reasons why I have games at 1, 2, 3, and 4 are because I've played them with so many different people. Yeah. It's not just playing with you on the Game Schooler podcast. Now, you're my best friend, Doug. I love playing games with you. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that so many of his games work in a middle school, after school program, so many of his games work with just new people. Hey, you want to try to play a game? And who's this weirdo that has 400 games in his house? No. This is okay. Even if you've only played Monopoly, you're going to like this. Yeah. Yeah. And anybody that knows me, gaming with my mother-in-law is not something that happens very often. So let's end on a positive note.
I'm saying how positive that I'm proving your point that you can play these games with so many different people. That's not odd for me to have that experience, and to be able to play with different people is really remarkable. So a recap on the list is 10 Blue Lagoon, 9 Ra, 8 Tutankhamun, 7 My City, 6 Whale Riders, 5 Sunrise Lane, 4 The Quest for El Dorado, 3 Llama, 2 Shotten or Battle Line, and number 1 Lost Cities. Couple of brief honorable mentions that didn't make the list from my end were High Society, which is an auction game in which the person who spends the most in the auction automatically loses. So you're trying to accrue the most points by not spending the most money. And then a game ironically called Money, in which you are using different currencies to collect other currencies in order to score points. And so it's a little bit of throwing your bid out there with currencies you no longer want in order to collect currencies of another type.
Yeah, and then a game that made my top 10 list that Doug probably even forgot about or wanted to forget about is Meow.
Never played it.
You haven't played this pleasant little trick taker? I swear me and Liza played it. Oh, I'll have to bring that over then.
I don't think so.
It has these wonderfully odd-shaped cards. It's a trick taker with 3 different suits.
Never seen it in my life.
Oh, gosh. All right, I'm bringing it over. We'll have to play it. But you're competing for tokens in the middle. And folks, some of the tokens you don't want to win. So it has that wonderful balance of no, I don't want that negative 10 point. I cannot win this trick. Oh oh man, I won it. And then the next one, you really want to win it because it has a fishbone and it allows you to clear it out. So Meow was just one that I'd like to call out. Other games, I'm not going to go. I've got another 10 on my list, so let's just end it there.
Okay, so that is going to do it for us this week. Hopefully you enjoyed that interview. A special thank you again to Dr. Reiner Knizia for spending the time to chat with us and have just an awesome conversation. We really appreciate that. And as far as other usual end of episode things, let me get there. You'd think I'd have this stuff memorized, but I do not.
Get out into the disco. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yep. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Follow us on X. Michael is dominating there at GameSchoolerU. And then join the Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. We'd love to have you. Great community there. Next week.
Hey, hold on. Folks, if you're listening, please go subscribe on YouTube. It's one area, one channel. Doug's doing incredible work over there, especially getting some of our reviews up. I know the work he's going to do with this episode. We've got to bump our subscribers up there, though, so we can be taken a little bit seriously. So even just get your Moz phone and hit subscribe. Start a burner account, hit subscribe. Let's bump those up a little bit. Now back to you, Doug.
Great. And next week, I have no idea what we're doing. We haven't discussed it. We've got plenty of stuff in the queue, so it won't be hard to put together. But you'll just have to be surprised. Maybe we'll tease something in the Discord. Probably not. I'll forget. But thank you so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
And thank you to Pex Ammo 84 on our Discord for getting the good doctor on our show. Now get out there and keep gaming.